I am delighted to invite two BCRTA leaders to help with this next interview. David Denyer is currently the chair of our communications committee, and many of you watching today's broadcast will remember him as the editor of Teacher Magazine. And Linda Watson is our current pensions chair, pensions and benefits committee chair, and she has a very long history with the teacher's pension plan. And so it's appropriate to invite both of them here to interview a special guest, Stuart Morgan, who's the executive director of the BC Teachers Pension Plan. And I'll turn it over to you, David, to ask the first question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tim. And thank you, Stuart, for agreeing to be with us this afternoon. I'm always intrigued by how people come into a particular position, whether it's by happenstance or calculation or a bit of a mix. Would you be good enough to give us an outline of your background and experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to start by saying thank you to David, Linda and Tim for the opportunity to come and talk to you today. So David, in response to your question, my role is to serve the BC Teachers Pension Board of Trustees as its executive director. And I also have the same role for the BC Public Service Pension Board of Trustees. So how did I come to this position? Well, before I started in this role, I worked for around 15 years as an actuary and as a strategic pension consultant. And that's a career which has spanned both Canada and the UK. And most recently, I was working for a major Canadian consultancy based from Vancouver, where I provided advice to a broad variety of pension boards and plan sponsors. So as I've mentioned, by profession, I am a fellow of both the Canadian and the UK Institute of Actuaries. Before that, my academic education is in mathematics. So I began my career as an academic, where I completed a PhD in maths before deciding to pursue a career as a consultant.
Hello, Stuart. Good to see you. I'm interested in if you could describe for our members a bit about your responsibilities as executive director and the overall structure of the pension plan. You might touch on the governance, oversight, and administrative functions a bit.
Many of us may well be aware that the teachers' pension plan here in BC has what we call a joint trusteeship governance structure. And what that means in practice is that effectively members and employers have an equal share of responsibility for the plan, an equal share of contributions, an equal share if there's ever a funding shortfall, but also an equal ownership of any surplus assets that may exist. Now, within that structure, plan members are represented by the plan member partner, who is the BC Teachers Federation, and the employers are represented by the plan employer partner, who is the government of British Columbia. The pension plan is set up as a trust, and I always say that the central characteristic of a trust is that it separates both the legal and the beneficial ownership of the trust property. And in our case, the trust property is the assets of the pension plan. So it's the board of trustees who are the legal owner of those assets, but the beneficiary, our plan members, is the beneficial owner. And so while it's the trustees who are then responsible for the administration and the investments of the plan, but they do delegate day-to-day activities. So to do this, it's the same piece of legislation that actually created the governance structure. Also created two agents to the board, the BC Pension Corporation and the BC Investment Management Corporation, which we often refer to as BCI. So the BC Pension Corporation is responsible for the administration of the plan, and they're the people who make the monthly pension payments, and they would be the team who you speak to when members have questions about their pension. Then BCI is the organisation who's responsible for the management of the plan's assets. So where the Board of Trustees comes into it is it's the board of trustees who make strategic decisions, and then they provide direction to the plan's agents. So one of the simplest examples there would be that it's the board of trustees who set the investment strategy for the plan, and then BCI executes that strategy on their behalf. And it's then a critical piece of the work of the board is to oversee the work of its agents. Now, in addition to the agents, the board from time to time does retain services from other external service providers. And the board also employs an executive director, and that's the role which I currently hold. And we are supported by a small team at the Pension Board Secretariats. Sorry, that's probably a long-winded answer, Linda, but to come back around to your original question of the role of the executive director, I would distill that into three key parts. Firstly, it's my role to support the Board of Trustees to fulfil its responsibilities to plan members, and that includes the oversight of its agents. Secondly, it falls with me to support the board to oversee its risk management efforts, and it's also my responsibility to help the board to maintain relationships with key groups.
I'm interested in how the partners, and you might want to mention who they are, on the Teacher Pension Plan Board of Trustees work together to really benefit the plan.
Yeah, of course. And I suppose just referring back to what we were just saying, that the plan partners are the BC Teachers Federation and the BC government. And so there are well-defined roles and responsibilities between the Board of Trustees and those plan partners. And those roles and responsibilities are documented in the plan's joint trust agreements. And that's a document which we fondly refer to as the JTA. And it's one of the main governing documents for the pension plan. So within the framework specifies in the JTA that there is a conscious effort to be transparent with information that is passed between the board and the plan partners where it's appropriate to do so. But what I would say, David, is that one of the key roles of the plan partners is to appoint trustees to the board. So that the BC Teachers Pension Board is made up of 10 trustees. 5 of those are appointed by the BC government, and 5 are appointed by the BCTF, who can select from active teachers, retirees, as well as excluded employees. But then as the legal administrator of the plan, the Board of Trustees, once it's formed, has what we call a fiduciary responsibility towards the plan members and other beneficiaries. So what the board then has to do to fulfill their fiduciary responsibility is that they have to act in the best financial interests of plan members. And in doing so, they need to apply a standard, we say, is to apply a standard of care that a person of ordinary prudence would when they're looking after their own affairs. Trustees have to act impartially, and they do have to avoid conflicts of interests. So in practice, what this means is regardless of who appoints the trustees to the board, all trustees have the same responsibility to act in the best financial interests of plan members.
So, Stuart, I know that across Canada, the pension landscape is varied and vast. How do you stay in touch with what's happening with other pension plans and learn from them, share best practices, and so forth?
I'd say it's a really important part of the role, Linda. And how I go about that is staying in close contact with our sister plans here in BC, including the BC College Municipal and Public Service plans. It also extends to maintaining connections with other public sector plans across Canada, but also the broader pensions industry as well. And I think these connections really help me and therefore the board to stay informed of thought leadership within the industry. So what I have found through this role is if there is an issue that's being considered by the teachers' pension boards, then there's a very good chance that one of our peers has also considered the same issue. So actually having those connections with peers in other public sector plans really is, I think, a critical support network for us. So if we look, for example, at our sister plans here in BC, we do have several committees which are represented by the college, the municipal teachers and public service trustees. And we use those as an opportunity to discuss things of mutual interest across all of the boards. Our board is also a member of the Canadian Public Pension Leadership Council, which is abbreviated to the CPPLC. And that's a network of 12 non-partisan public sector pension plans from across Canada. And collectively, that group represents more than 2.5 million members. So one of the roles that I have is to sit on the board of the CPPLC. And most recently, I have also joined the Association of Canadian Pensions Managements, the ACPM, who have a regional council here in BC. And for me, that's an opportunity to connect with industry professionals across the province. And then finally, in response to your question here, through my professional work as a fellow of the Canadian and the UK Institutes of Actuaries, that does put me in a global network of peers, which is a very useful support network.
Yeah, that's a lot of outreach. I'm sure we benefit from all those contacts on our behalf. Thank you.
We're fortunate in having a defined benefit plan, but not so long ago, there were quite a number of reports in the news about how employers and government, even in some instances, were trying to, if you like, get out of a defined benefit plan for their employees. So it's kind of come under, you might say, attack to some extent. Do you see a role for the teacher's pension plan in keeping the defined benefit pension, if you like, idea, concept, intact and surviving?
Yes, for sure. And there's quite a lot to unpack there in that question, David. Perhaps how I would respond to it is by talking a little bit about what the Teachers Pension Board does in this space, and perhaps focusing on the work it does through its membership of the CPPLC. So through its membership with the CPPLC, the Pension Board contributes to research that supports the value of predictable lifetime pension benefits in Canada. And defined benefit pensions are absolutely critical to this. So there was a piece of research published by the CPPLC back in 2021, I believe, and it was a really fascinating piece of research that highlighted the economic benefits of public sector pension plans in Canada. And one of the key conclusions reached are that the economic benefits of DB plans are far-reaching beyond just those who are actually members of the pensions. So just a few sound bites that came from this research. At the time, this research concluded that Canada's GDP benefits by more than $80 billion as a result of public sector pensions. And that was then described to be supporting around 900,000 jobs and more than $33 billion in wages nationally. There was also another piece of research published last year by the CPPLC, and at that time we surveyed Canadians on their perceptions of retirement. And that survey really showed strongly that Canadians are desiring and looking for a lifetime guaranteed retirement income that's adjusted for inflation. It's almost as if they're describing the teacher's pension plan. But what was quite striking in that research was that the overall well-being of individuals who participate in a defined benefit pension plan is seen to be improved. And the conclusion was that being a member of a DB plan removes a lot of financial stress in build-up to preparing for retirement.
Stuart, other retired teachers across Canada, and we are in touch with retired teacher groups all across the land, they don't seem to always get a full cost of living adjustment to their pensions. But in BC, we have for these past many years. Can you tell us about our cost of living adjustments? How are they calculated, and will they continue?
The plan essentially has two separate accounts. The first is a basic account, and that's used to fund the basic pension benefits that member accrue during their working lives. So that's the guaranteed pension which our members have. And both members and employers contribute a proportion of their pay into that account. And then the second account is what we call the inflation adjustment account. And that's what we use to fund the cost of living increases. And again, both members and the employers do contribute a proportion of their pay into that account. So cost of living adjustments are not guaranteed by the plan, but they can be granted on an annual basis at the discretion of the Board of Trustees. But I think it's important to remember that once a cost of living adjustment has been granted, then it becomes part of a member's guaranteed lifetime pension. So it cannot be taken away once it's been granted. So what I would say in response to this question is that providing cost of living adjustments are one of the funding priorities for the board. And it is the opinion of the plan's actuary that the ability of the plan to provide full cost of living adjustments are projected to be sustainable into the future. Now, of course, there are mechanisms within the plan. So if for whatever reason we hit a point in the future where there's insufficient funds in that inflation adjustment account to pay cost of living increases every year, there are sort of mechanisms to transfer additional surplus funds into that account should they be needed. And then the final part of your question in terms of how we calculate the cost of living adjustments, the plan rules do specify the maximum amount that can be applied each year. And so what the board looks at is the increase to the CPI index, the Consumer Prices Index, over the past 12 months ending September 30th. So for the increase that was applied on January 1st this year, we would have had a look at the increase in the CPI for the 12 months ending September 30th of 23.
Well, thank you. Those CPI increases are very welcome and a high priority for our members, of course. We know that the members of the plan twice voted to increase their contributions to the inflation adjustment account because they place such a high priority on maintaining that standard of living through our, we hope, many long years of retirement.
Absolutely.
Are people retiring earlier, later, or about the same? Or are there any significant changes that you see?
It's a fascinating topic when you start delving into the demographics. And there's actually a lot of information which the board publishes on its membership and demographics in the annual reports. And that can be found on the plan's website. But as a plan, we have more than 105,000 members at this time. But what I find particularly interesting is it's the number of retired members has been growing faster than the number of active members. And that's a trend that we've been seeing for a number of years now. So what we have is referred to as a mature pension plan, which means that the number of retirees is becoming a larger proportion of the total membership. Why that's happening? I mean, the simplest response is because people are living longer. We're having longer retirements. But it's really important demographic trends for us to monitor because it can have an impact on cash flow. I mean, we always need to make sure that the plan's bank accounts has sufficient liquidity to be able to pay pensioners each month, ideally without having to divest assets that are generating a good return for the pension plan. So once every 3 years, the board must receive an actuarial valuation of the plan, and that is a detailed review of the plan's financial health. So the next valuation needs to be completed this year, And so over the coming months, the board will be reviewing in detail these demographics trends, looking at summaries of the plan's membership data and how they may impact the plan into the future. So if I may, David, I might say we'll come back to that question later in the year once we have some updated data to look at trends.
Thank you.
So, Stuart, another role of the Teacher Pension Board that it's taken on is offering members health benefits, such as the Green Shield plans for extended health, dental, travel insurance. How does the board get feedback on the coverage offered in those plans and their user experience of the members?
Mm-hmm. So you are right. Retiree members of the Teachers Pension Plan do have the option to access post-retirement group health and dental benefits through the plan. And important to say up front that the cost of those benefits are fully funded by plan members. So when it comes to this plan, it's the Board of Trustees who determines the coverage that are provided through both the health and the dental benefits plans. The board then employs an insurance provider who is currently Green Shields to both do the administration of that plan and to underwrite the benefits. So in terms of how the board receives feedback, there are a number of different ways. Firstly, members can write to the board. If members have a suggestion or some feedback to provide on their experiences, they can write directly to the board. Every single letter that we receive comes across my desk and also the chair of the board's desk, and we provide a summary of feedback to the full board. Many of our members do speak to a representative from the BC Pension Corporation, and I know that the Pension Corporation do run surveys from time to time after members have contacted them. All of that information is then shared anonymously with myself and the board. And I say the third area is through open dialogue with the Retired Teachers Association. So if you provide feedback through the association, then a summary of that does get shared with us. I would also highlight as well that the board is currently in the process of reviewing the post-retirement group health coverage, and it did undertake a comprehensive survey of retirees last September, October time. So the intention is to share the findings of that survey with the membership later in the spring.
What services can the Teacher Pension Plan office, if you will, provide for members? Is there phone support and web support? Just a quick outline maybe of just what's available.
No, indeed. I guess the simple response, David, is all of the above. The team at the Pension Corporation really are here to help, and they really appreciate hearing from members. So if you have a question, if you're looking for information, then please do not hesitate to reach out to a member of the team at the Pension Corporation. You can call or you can send a message if you have a question. There's also online tools. If you'd like a projection of anything, then you can access My Accounts, which is accessible through the website, and you can have access to all of your records and pension entitlements online as well.
Thank you. Very helpful.
I know in my experience, Stuart, whenever I've had a question or when I was planning my own retirement, I would phone them up, and people on the phone were so easy to talk to, willing to help, and really I just had nothing but praise for the work that they did. Just they didn't know who I was. I was just a member calling in, and they were just great.
It's great to hear, Linda. The team of the Pension Corporation really are first class, and they're here to help. So please do reach out.
Great note to end on. Thank you, Stuart.
Well, thanks to all of you for your participation in this conversation. And we like to say here at the Retired Teachers Association, we're people helping people. And I think a similar theme has emerged in terms of the work at the Pension Corporation and teachers' pension plans. So thank you very much, Stuart and Linda and David, for your contributions today. Thank you.